Morning and welcome to the show. I am currently shirtless, so if seeing side of a male boobie offends you, then please log off. But that being said, schizophrenia is a little bit misunderstood if we are to talk with the assumption that I'm a patient of or carrier of it and thus have some understanding about it. I notice based on what I feel like when I'm on my normal meds and when I'm going through my day and have the knowledge that I have schizophrenia and comparing that with pre-episode belief or feeling about what it would be like to have schizophrenia are completely different. There is a discrepancy there. And it's that the mind becomes accustomed to pain very quickly. So if your subconscious mind goes the path of being mean to you, and let's put it at that, it runs out of things to do when it's just downright coming for you very quickly. So it has to develop other things to do. And most of those work through questioning your beliefs in a very particular way. They make you adapt to a worldview that isn't your own, but you know is functional. And if somebody else's worldview very often, in that it is very hard to find a worldview that absolutely no human ascribes to, so it is somebody else's worldview. But to you, it is up is down, left is right, good is bad, and so on and so forth. And just immersing you like a baby being baptized into that strangeness. And you literally have no words for it. I have seen and cataloged and put into motion so many weird things that I've seen in my what you would call schizophrenia that you would not, and I would not prior to this believe that such can be done. But there is a uniform bandwidth to mental illness in that while common folk on the street can say, "Oh, I'm so sorry for you, please stay away," because that is what they most often say in terms of spirit, not in words, but that is the mood they send out. But amongst the even moderately well-to-do, especially the well-informed populace, there is an extraordinary amount of desire to see if openness helps. So if your hallucination that bothers you is about aliens implanting humans, what you will get is South Park, because that covers the topic in a tone that is friendly to the worldview that is being presented to you. They never present these worldviews as something you need to defend against, but as something that your previous defense that you've taken against this now seen worldview is so harmful to you that the only way to help you get out of your arrogant man cave is to literally make you live through the hell you're putting others through. And usually it is somebody who you don't really consider much. It might be some outsider group you don't really consider, but putting you into their shoes is literally the only way to solve this arrogance problem before you die from it. The spirits being a part of you in schizophrenia are not interested in others, they're interested in you. And if by torturing you, they get you to a point where you don't cause the death of others, they might very well take it. Because no law enforcement, no military would do to you what your subconscious mind desires to do to you. But the one thing this people understand, the torture part they understand, but the one thing they don't understand about torture is that constant pain gets downvoted. It's not important. It may be an important flash, but after a while, even very severe pain simply vanishes if you wait because your nerves become accustomed to it. So it isn't constant streams of horror being shown at you. It is being shown such alien viewpoints that your mind literally recoils in horror at what it's seeing. It is so alien and so out of this world that to see it even once for a normal casual writer, for example, they would have inspiration for the rest of their life to write. Putting one of those episodes behind this paywall we call DMT and making you go through it with the knowledge that this is going to end in 8 hours is one experience. And for many, it is an absolutely life altering experience. But in schizophrenia, in my case, it's a dull background hum of mind blowing evil that is just casually being shown to you to be somehow connected to your actions. Now, the doctors say two things. One, it is never connected to your actions. That is the popular societal view that we take, that there is literally no justifiable legal defense for act of God. But if you go to a doctor and get them convinced, which isn't very hard to do, that your problem isn't your religion, it's that you don't literally understand your religion. If you understand your religion and you have a problem with it, then that's simple. Change religions or modify your religion. But if you don't understand your worldview, how can you be said to have a wrong worldview when your worldview is really distinctly not understanding the world? So this fog of amazing background is very mind blowing, but after about 5 minutes of it, it is very, very boring. And it is boring to such a degree that it can shift to hostile alien faces attacking you. And your reaction will be, cute. Because there is nothing to see in it. You are already existentially terrified beyond all mortal reasoning, and hearing a loud bang, having somebody try to pick your lock in the middle of the night, stuff like that is nonsensical. It doesn't matter. But the humor in schizophrenia is the most misunderstood part, because 99% of the time the schizophrenic is well able to handle their symptoms. There are the people who post during or do public things during the very bad part of the episode, but after you've had like two of those and everybody knows what you're doing, they will recognize the actual episode, and it isn't talking to your shop clerk about UFOs, because that's, to a weirdo, that's normal. It's literally running down the street naked, covered in bath salts, and shouting that the aliens are coming. That's an episode. And the difference between the two is incredible. Most people think schizophrenia is the tech guy in Hollywood who is a little and talks a little bit about aliens and such. That is prodromal, is the word, I think. It is the belief that is radically not aligned with what society believes, is in way it doesn't need to be, but there is very often a sense of spirituality about said belief. And it hasn't transitioned into something where the person denies reality's primary nature. Then it's not schizophrenia. If the person believes that the coffee shop owner who is tending the bar is an alien pretending to be human, that is not schizophrenia. That is at most prodromal schizophrenia. If they cannot smile, walk up to them, smile, ask for a refill, pay, and walk back, then it is schizophrenia, because then reality has taken a secondary role to their illusion. As long as reality has a primary role in that you can convince your mind to play some kind of part with this weird play that you're seeing, then you're doing fine. That is the difference in an episode and not being in an episode. The very stark contrast, the very obvious difference of reality when you are in an episode is very, very striking to somebody who has never seen one. It is very, very striking. Now, in some cases, the existence of a prodromal, I think is the word, prodromal schizophrenia can be seen to be linked with the appearance of medical schizophrenia or actual psychotic schizophrenia. But it is not one-to-one correlation, because if it were, do you really think we'd allow those people to walk around? It's not. And that's why they get to walk around. Most of the people who have radically different views from society, in that they believe like chemtrails are used to poison your children, for example, eventually just simply snap out of it. It is some kind of time delayed stress response which we don't completely understand, but usually most people just at some point snap out of it. It cannot be by normal therapy means significantly hasted. The important part to remember here is that talking therapy, psychotherapy, psychoanalysis, whatever, has a very low chance of influencing a schizophrenic, prodromal or otherwise. It has a very, very, very low chance of influencing them. But good medical intervention is thus far the best outcome. And by medical, I mean medicinal. And in terms of medicinal, the whole thing is pretty easy to compress into a couple of very easily understood chemical reactions. When you do anything during your day, you have two primary neurotransmitters which do the doing part. The pleasure parts are the morphines and what have you, but the two that actually do the doing part, the thinking itself, those are serotonin, which can be described as how wide your thinking is, and dopamine, which can be described as how back and forth your actions are. We do know that schizophrenia has something to do with the dopamine pathways, but we don't know what. It seems to agitate them somehow to produce some kind of dopamine loop, which like exists on its own. It seems to generate what we call a echo chamber effect, in that you get what you put out in the universe, and usually your fantasies involve the people around you. But if your fantasies become very absurd, then your universe has a tendency to make very absurd realities available to you. And these, like any other realities, reward by playing them. And we cannot access these realities through our mutual common current understanding, but we know, due to the fact that they have a dopamine feedback loop, that they are organic life forms. And somehow this is seeable in the dopamine pathway activity. So those that block dopamine, those that enhance serotonin, and if the condition is very severe, those that block serotonin and dopamine have a very good effect on a patient who has schizophrenia. They will, under the modern Western standard, they won't notice, in my opinion, as much of a change as the medical industry and media seems to portray, in that you go in having a schizophrenic episode talking about aliens, and 10% of what you say can be actually verified, and 90% is the story that you built on top of it. And you're acting like the 90% is the reality. And you go in and you get medicated, and the next day your friends see you and you're like, that's not the way it goes. And then for like, they visit you every year and you're like, in that wheelchair and go, that's not what happens. The medication is pretty mild, but I have documented it quite extensively on my channel, the effects of it. But considering the severity of your condition, the medication is actually far milder than I thought. I have, when I'm on the second lowest dose, which is for a pretty active imagination, it's still a pretty low dose, and it's basically a long-term haloperidol. It's slightly different, but the effect is very much the same. And it is slightly better than haloperidol. It feels a little bit better. And it takes about 4 days from the injection that I am back to reasonably okay normality. I might be a little sluggish, but no more than if I haven't slept well that night. But that's about it. And if I happen to drink like 2 energy drinks and then go talk to people, nobody will notice that I'm different. But I will notice happiness, which is the only way I describe it. It feels like somebody has come from the state itself and told you that you are entitled to happiness. And here is the best way we can do it. For the rest of your life, if you so much as hint in the direction of anxiety again because of, say, work, we will give you more happiness. That seems to be, to me, what schizophrenia medication is like. You have worked quite enough for several lifetimes. Now, if you ever even mention the word anxiety to me again, you will get a second dose. Okay. schizophrenics, the for most schizophrenics, the previously alluded to health plan of if you so much as mention anxiety to me again, I will give you even more of the pleasant juice is a very good treatment outline. The doctors seem to intuitively realize that the troubles facing these particular types of people are larger than their ability to comprehend. But the correct method of giving them pleasure and calmness is in the right path. There seems to be something of such deep significance bothering them that the doctor, no matter how much they poke and prod, will never get to it. But the correct outline seems to be calming and joy, which to me points to the classical alien syndrome, meaning that they are living with what can only be described as a mask of sanity without being psychopathic. Though, as in no emotion, they feel strongly about their situation just as they do about any fantasy they're in. But they do instinctively recognize it as a fantasy because their primary desire of what they do in reality is unavailable. Something like flight, for example, it's something so abstract and so intertwinedly made impossible for the person to attain that no amount of talking will get them out of it. You could, if you are very determined and mean, go through all the actions that you define to be impossible, whether they are immoral or just illegal or just physically impossible, such as flapping your arms and flying up, and then asking about every single one of them and gauging the reactions and making charts on what you think is the one. But then you would be intentionally placing the patient, if you go ask about illegal things, then you are intentionally placing the patient in a case where if they respond to you honestly, they will be harmed. So I believe the Kevin Spacey's "I believe this answers your question" thing. So my point is that if you know a schizophrenic and they're not incredibly insane at the moment and they are roughly on their medication, then there is a very high probability that whatever they say is as much true as if anybody else said it. And if they're not on their medication, you need to make some reality checks, but no adjustments yet. But if they are not on their meds and seem agitated in any way, then you need to start making reality corrections. By that, I mean ways to disentangle from the person in a way that nobody gets hurt. Because the other side of this coin is that if doctors cannot truly understand the schizophrenic other than to comprehend that they are going through pain, and they cannot fathom what is hurting them, then there is the very real risk that you will not be able to either. So the situation might not be, once it breaks into a psychosis, something like the person attacking you. they might sit very well in a calm posture 10 feet away, and you get massive scars on your body. That is what I mean. If the schizophrenic starts to be agitated, then you should start looking at the closest window to jump out of. But as long as they are generally calm, then they are near always okay. Their internal dialogue they have learned throughout the years to put in a form that doesn't impede their social interaction. They usually don't even realize what you mean by "do you hear voices?" Because about 40% of the population consistently hear voices. It's called an internal monologue. And if you, for example, read something on a paper, you can hear it in the wording of the author as far as you understand it, or yourself, or any other voice, but that is still hearing a voice. 55% have to literally speak the words aloud in their mind, and there is absolute quiet if they do not do that. These two species are as different as day and night, but both put on such a universal mask of sanity that their very existence is news. It's news. And of the 45% of people at the highest value estimate that do hear voices, about of those 3% and of total population, about 1% develop the kind of sometimes harmful voice. So yeah, have to take some considerations there. Now, there is the schizophrenia that develops to a person who has never heard voices, never has had the knock knock phenomena, has no idea what any of this astral stuff is, and they suddenly get plunged headfirst into the other end. And those survival rates are pretty low because you then tend to get pretty fucked by it all. Mostly because your body tends to burn out faster than your mind. Your body type, if you do end up there, tends to be very uniform, very like, I believe the old school word used to be spastic, I think. And due to that, if you do get the extra burden of other spirits, your ability to cope is rather low. Thus, many people who actually start the path of coping put on quite a lot of weight because it dampens the signals, makes it much easier to do. I believe a lot of fat around the nerve fibers and the constant feeling of fat in your body in a subconscious way might be calming to too many voices, but who knows? Who knows? And it is all very non-universal. But in the important part of this, I would say humor is the most undervalued part about schizophrenic. I mean, if I were to be in a Hollywood movie as a schizophrenic and I was told to act my part, I would make a lot of knock knock jokes. Like literally. Knock knock. Who's there? I don't know. Me neither. Come on in. A lot of knock knock jokes. Very many. But yeah, schizophrenics, right? I mean, I really think the most misunderstood part is the humor. Most schizophrenics are actually from experience kind of funny. They are definitely psychotic, and in that if you act in a way that does get them fired, they will probably do something very stupid just to prove their point. But they will be able to prove said point. but the humor is most often the most undervalued thing. I wouldn't say banging a special person is anywhere near as meaningful as literally the humor, in my opinion. The humor is the way to go. But I would say when a group of people with what you can describe as astral abilities gets agitated, it is wise for commoners to be cautious. Not because they are difficult for a barbarian to take down. That's not the case. Most wizards are very prone to being taken down by barbarians. But when there's a large group of them together, they might explode randomly. But that's about the size of it. So keep that in mind. But that you are pretty aware of as a society, but I still say the humor is not understood very well. Still say. The humor is not understood very well. I think I have figured out what I want to say to Greta Thunberg. Thinking about it for about 3 years now. Tried a few like random lines here and there, but none of them have been what I was looking for. Now I think I have it. I would say the current system came about not because of any individual who benefited from it, but because it worked. And it's a very ugly system. There is a great deal of darkness in it. But if you, now that you have power, as your first step, overthrow your entire predecessor's dynasty, then all I can say is prepare for an interesting time as your dynasty and walk away. Because if we give voting rights to people who have not had voting rights, and they look upon the corruption that is then visible when they have the voting rights, and they go overthrowy, then we might get Federation Star Trek, but we might equally get Roman Empire. And we've rolled this dice of what we actually get from this societal game a few times now. And thus far, we kind of sort of have a goodish system. It's not the best, but it's not the worst either. So, if you think you have a shot at a better society and you decide to destroy the society you came from to get there, then I question your motives and whether or not your deep commitment to the field actually carries out in deep, thoughtful actions. But it is your government, so you do what you want to do. I do not wish to entangle myself more than to say that. to tune if there's anything more to say. I'm gonna quit here. Astral is saying I invented the positron.